The night air was colder than she expected. Naomi stood outside the iron gate, her suitcase upright beside her, fingers numb as she pressed the doorbell again. The mansion loomed behind the gate, lights glowing warmly inside, every window reminding her that she was standing on the wrong side of her own home. Nothing happened. She lowered her hands slowly, staring at the dark camera lens above the gate. He had seen her. She knew he had. Earlier that evening she had watched from the car as her husband laughed with another woman, his hand resting far too comfortably at the small of her back. Naomi hadn't made a scene. She hadn't screamed or cried. She had simply walked away, heart pounding, dignity barely intact. She had come home because she believed, stupidly, that this place was still hers too. Her phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. Go somewhere else tonight. We'll talk tomorrow. No apology. No explanation. Just refusal. Naomi felt something inside her go very still. She typed back with trembling fingers. This is my house too. The response came almost instantly. Not tonight. The gate remained locked. Inside the house, Sunung-jae stood in the living room, phone still in his hand, jaw tight. The woman beside him, elegant, amused, unbothered, sipped her drink and watched him with curiosity. She's outside, isn't she? The woman asked lightly. Sunung-jae didn't answer. She always comes back, she continued. That's why you never had to choose. His silence hardened. Outside, Naomi hugged her coat tighter around herself. The cold was biting now, seeping into her bones. She looked down the empty street, suddenly aware of how late it was. How quiet. She could have called a friend. Could have gone to a hotel. Instead she sat on the low stone wall near the gate, exhaustion finally winning. Inside the house, laughter echoed faintly. Music played. Life went on without her. Naomi closed her eyes, telling herself she would rest for just a moment. She didn't notice when the streetlights flickered. She didn't notice the car slowing down at the corner. Morning arrived quietly. Sunung-jae woke with an unfamiliar unease pressing against his chest. The house was silent now, the guest long gone. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, too bright, too ordinary. He checked his phone. No messages from Naomi. That was unusual. She always sent something. Even when she was hurt. Even when she was angry. He dressed quickly and walked toward the front entrance, irritation already forming as he reached for his phone again, then stopped. The security monitor by the door caught his eye. The screen showed the front gate. Then he noticed something else. The suitcase. Still standing there. And beside the stone wall, a dark shape on the ground. Sunung-jae's breath caught. He opened the door and ran. Naomi lay slumped against the wall, her skin pale, lips slightly parted, hair damp with dew. Her coat was pulled tight around her, but her hands were cold when he dropped to his knees beside her. Naomi, he said sharply, shaking her shoulder. Naomi. No response. Panic surged, hot, immediate, uncontrollable. He pressed his fingers to her neck, searching for a pulse. It was there. Weak. Too weak. Call an ambulance, he barked into his phone, voice shaking for the first time in years. As he waited, kneeling on the cold stone, the weight of the night crashed down on him. The gate. The messages. Her standing outside while he chose comfort over responsibility. The irony was cruel. By the time the ambulance arrived, Naomi stirred faintly, a soft sound escaping her throat. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. She saw him. Confusion flickered across her face, then hurt. You didn't let me in, she whispered. The words were quiet. They shattered him. I'm here now, he said hoarsely. Her gaze drifted away. Too late. They loaded her into the ambulance, the doors closing with a final echoing thud. Sunung-jae climbed in beside her without hesitation, his hand hovering near hers, afraid to touch. At the hospital, doctors moved quickly, voices calm but urgent. Hypothermia. Dehydration. Exhaustion. Stress. Each word felt like a sentence. Sunung-jae stood outside the room, staring at the floor, replaying the moment he'd typed that message. Not tonight. He had thought he was maintaining control. Instead he had locked her out of safety. When the doctor finally allowed him inside, Naomi lay wrapped in blankets, color slowly returning to her face. Her eyes were open now, alert, but guarded. You're awake, he said. Yes, she replied flatly. I didn't think. She cut him off with a look. No. You didn't. Silence filled the room, thick and uncomfortable. I spent the night outside, she continued. Not because I had nowhere to go, but because I wanted to see if you would notice. He swallowed hard. You did, she said. Just not in time. The truth settled heavily between them. Outside the window, the city moved on, unaware that something fundamental had shifted. This was no longer about jealousy. It was about what happens when a woman is denied entry, not just to a house but to a marriage. And as Sunung-jae stood there watching the woman he had shut out lie in a hospital bed because of his choice, he understood something with brutal clarity. The surprise that came in the morning was not her collapse. It was the realization that he was the one who might not be allowed back in. Naomi didn't cry. That was the first thing Sunung-jae noticed as the hours passed. Her eyes remained dry, her expression calm in a way that felt colder than anger. She lay in the hospital bed wrapped in thick blankets, fur-line taped to her arm, cheeks still pale but no longer gray. The nurses moved in and out, adjusting monitors, checking her temperature, speaking softly as if loud words might break something fragile. Sunung-jae stood near the foot of the bed, hands clasped behind his back, posture controlled. He looked like he did in boardrooms and negotiations, still unreadable. Only his eyes betrayed him. They stayed on Naomi's face as if he feared she might vanish. You should sit, Naomi said finally. The suggestion wasn't caring. It was distant. A reminder that he was a guest in the room he should have protected. Sunung-jae pulled the chair closer and sat, careful not to make noise. How do you feel? He asked. Naomi stared at the ceiling. Cold, she answered. And embarrassed. He flinched. You don't have to be embarrassed. I do, she replied calmly. I sat outside my own gate like a stranger. Like someone waiting for permission to exist. Sunung-jae swallowed, throat tight. I didn't think you'd stay there. That's the problem, she said. You didn't think. Silence dropped between them. The monitor beeped steadily, indifferent. A nurse entered and checked Naomi's pulse, then looked at Sunung-jae. She needs rest, she said firmly. Stress can complicate recovery. Sunung-jae nodded. Understood. When the nurse left, Naomi shifted slightly, wincing. Sunung-jae leaned forward instinctively, then stopped himself. Don't, Naomi said quietly. He froze. Don't what? Don't become gentle now because you're scared, she replied. I've spent too long accepting scraps of softness after you've hurt me. The words were not loud. They were precise. Each one cut. Sunung-jae exhaled slowly. You're right, he said. I'm scared. Naomi finally looked at him. Her eyes were sharp, awake. Good, she said. You should be. He sat with that, absorbing it without protest. Later, Camille, Naomi's cousin and closest confidant, arrived, hair still damp from a rushed shower, eyes furious. She went straight to Naomi's bedside and held her hand, gaze softening instantly. I'm okay, Naomi murmured. Camille turned her head toward Sunung-jae like a blade. What did you do? Sunung-jae didn't pretend confusion. I didn't let her in. Camille's eyes widened then narrowed. You locked her out at night. Naomi's fingers tightened slightly around Camille's hand, a quiet request not to explode. Camille held back but her voice trembled. If anything had happened to her. It almost did, Sunung-jae replied. His calmness was not arrogance. It was restraint. I know. Camille stared at him for a long moment, searching for manipulation. You're going to make it right, she said finally. It wasn't a question. Sunung-jae nodded. If she allows it. Naomi's gaze returned to the window. That's the first honest thing you've said. Camille stayed until the doctor arrived with updated results. Naomi's temperature was improving. Her dehydration was resolving. But the doctor's tone remained serious. She needs rest and stability, the doctor explained. No more sudden stress. Her body took a shock. Sunung-jae listened closely then asked, how long until she can go home? Possibly tomorrow, the doctor said. If she continues improving. But she shouldn't be alone. Naomi's mouth tightened. I won't be alone. Camille nodded immediately. She can stay with me. Sunung-jae's jaw tightened but he didn't argue. Whatever she wants, he said. That night the hospital lights dimmed and the corridors quieted. Camille went home briefly to collect things. Sunung-jae remained, though Naomi didn't ask him to. He sat in the chair staring at the floor, listening to Naomi's breathing. Every now and then she shifted, discomfort pulling her from sleep. Each time he sat up, alert, then forced himself to stay still. It was torture. He had always believed control meant strength. Tonight, control meant not reaching for her when she didn't want him to. Around midnight, Naomi woke fully, eyes open, gaze fixed on him. "You're still here," she said. "Yes," he replied softly. She studied him. "Why?" Sunung-jae hesitated. "Because I can't undo what I did. But I can refuse to do it again." Naomi's expression didn't soften. "One night doesn't erase years." "I know," he said. "But it starts somewhere." Naomi let out a slow breath. "You humiliated me." The words were blunt. Honest. Sunung-jae nodded. "Yes. You chose her," Naomi continued. "And you punished me for seeing it." His throat tightened. "Yes." Naomi's eyes glistened for the first time, but no tears fell. "Do you know what it felt like? Sitting outside that gate, hearing music inside, knowing you were awake and you still didn't open it." Sunung-jae's hands clenched on his knees. "It felt like I erased you," he said quietly. Naomi blinked, surprised by the accuracy. "Yes," she whispered. "It felt like I stopped existing." Silence filled the room again, heavy and final. Then Naomi said something that made his chest tighten. "I'm not asking you to beg," she said. "I'm not interested in watching you suffer for drama." Sunung-jae looked at her carefully. "I'm asking you to be honest," she continued. "Why did you do it?" Sunung-jae stared at the floor for a long moment, as if the answer tasted bitter. "Because I wanted power," he admitted. "And letting you in would have meant admitting I was wrong. It would have meant choosing you in front of her." Naomi nodded slowly, absorbing the truth. "So you chose your pride?" "Yes," he said. "And I almost lost you for it." Naomi's gaze drifted away again, exhausted. "I don't know what happens after this," she said quietly. Sunung-jae leaned forward slightly, careful. "Then we don't decide tonight. You heal. You rest. And when you're ready, you tell me what you need." Naomi's voice was barely above a whisper. "And if what I need is to leave?" Sunung-jae's jaw tightened, but he forced the words out anyway. "Then I let you." Naomi turned her head, looking at him with a new kind of seriousness. "That," she said, "is the first time you've sounded like my husband again." Sunung-jae didn't answer. He simply sat there in the dim hospital room, realizing that the Rayal gate he'd locked last night wasn't iron. It was trust. And this time he would have to earn the key. Morning light crept into the hospital room slowly, pale and unforgiving. Naomi woke before anyone else this time. Her body felt heavy, every movement reminding her of the cold night she had spent outside, but the sharpest ache was no longer physical. It sat somewhere deeper, quieter, where disappointment had settled and refused to leave. She stared at the ceiling, listening. Sunung-jae was still there. She could sense him before she opened her eyes. The controlled stillness, the careful breathing of a man who hadn't slept properly but refused to leave. When she finally turned her head, she saw him sitting in the same chair, jacket folded over his arm, dark hair slightly disheveled in a way she rarely saw. He looked up instantly. "You're awake," he said. "Yes," she replied. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "How do you feel?" She considered the question. "Clear," she said finally. "Which might be worse." He nodded as if he understood. Perhaps he did. The doctor came in shortly after, reviewed her vitals and confirmed what they had already suspected. She could be discharged later that day, provided she rested and avoided stress. The word stress hung in the air like an accusation. When the doctor left, Naomi shifted slowly, pushing herself more upright. Sunung-jae stood immediately, then stopped, waiting. "I can sit on my own," she said. "I know," he replied, stepping back. That small restraint did not go unnoticed. Camille arrived again mid-morning, armed with coffee, a change of clothes, and a protective glare that softened only when she looked at Naomi. "You're leaving this place today," Camille said firmly. "Not back there." Naomi nodded. "I know." Sunung-jae didn't object. He didn't argue. He simply listened. While Camille stepped out to finalize paperwork, Naomi finally turned her attention fully to her husband. "I've been thinking," she said. Sunung-jae straightened slightly. About what? About last night, she replied. About every other night that felt like that, just quieter. His jaw tightened. He didn't interrupt. I kept telling myself it wasn't that bad, Naomi continued. That you were busy. That this was the life I married into. But standing outside that gate made something very clear. She paused, swallowing. I wasn't your priority. I was your convenience. The words landed without cruelty. Without drama. They were simply true. Sunung-jae nodded once. Yes. She studied him. You're not denying it. No, he said. Because denying it would be another way of shutting you out. That answer unsettled her more than an excuse would have. I don't know if love survives that, Naomi said quietly. Sunung-jae looked at her, then really looked at her. Not as a wife, not as an obligation, but as a woman who had nearly paid for his pride with her life. I don't know either, he said. But I know pretending it didn't happen will destroy whatever chance it has. Camille returned, interrupting the moment. Naomi changed into the clothes Camille had brought, soft, familiar things that made her feel more like herself. When she emerged, Sunung-jae looked away politely, giving her privacy she hadn't realized she'd been missing for years. The drive away from the hospital was quiet. Camille sat in the front seat, Naomi in the back. Sunung-jae followed in a separate car. It was intentional. Naomi had asked for space, and this time he respected it without sulking or punishment. Camille's apartment was warm, lived-in, safe. Naomi sank onto the couch with a sigh as soon as she arrived. You're staying here, Camille said, no room for negotiation. As long as you need. Naomi nodded. Thank you. Sunung-jae stood near the door, uncertain for the first time in his life. I'll leave, he said quietly. Naomi looked at him. Not yet. He froze. I don't want you hovering, she said. But I don't want you disappearing either. I understand, he replied. She took a breath. Sit. He did. Camille watched the exchange carefully, then excused herself to the kitchen, giving them space without leaving entirely. Naomi folded her hands in her lap. This isn't about the other woman, she said. Not really. Sunung-jae nodded. I know. It's about what you did when you were challenged, she continued. You didn't talk. You didn't explain. You punished. His shoulders stiffened. That's how my world works. I don't live in your world, Naomi said. I live in mine. And in mine, being locked out isn't discipline. It's abandonment. The word lingered. Sunung-jae closed his eyes briefly. I never wanted to abandon you. But you did, she replied. Silence stretched between them, thick but necessary. Finally, Sunung-jae spoke. I can't change who I am overnight. Naomi nodded. I'm not asking you to. What are you asking? He said. She met his gaze. For the first time, I'm asking you to accept that I might choose myself instead of waiting for you to choose me. That frightened him more than any threat ever had. And if you do, he asked. Then you let me, she said. No retaliation. No control. No consequences disguised as concern. Sunung-jae exhaled slowly. All right. She searched his face. You mean it? Yes, he said. Because if I don't, then I haven't learned anything. Camille reappeared with tea, setting the cups down loudly enough to break the tension. I'll be here, she said pointedly. So behave. Sunung-jae almost smiled. That afternoon, Naomi slept deeply for the first time in days. When she woke, the apartment was quiet. Camille was out running errands. Sunung-jae was gone. For a brief moment, panic flared. Then she noticed the note on the table. I didn't want you to wake up and feel watched. I'm close if you need me. Take all the time you want. She sat back against the couch, heart racing, not with fear but with something unfamiliar. Relief. When Camille returned, Naomi handed her the note. Well, Camille said slowly, that's new. Naomi nodded. It is. As evening fell, Naomi stood by the window, watching the city lights come on one by one. For the first time since the night at the gate, she felt something loosen inside her chest. She still didn't know how this would end. But she knew one thing with certainty now. She would never again sit outside a locked door, waiting to be allowed back into her own life. The apartment settled into a quiet rhythm over the next few days. One Naomi wasn't used to but slowly began to trust. Camille left early each morning for work, kissing Naomi's forehead before she went, reminding her, sometimes too firmly, that rest was not optional. Naomi obeyed not because she was weak, but because she was learning that caring for herself didn't require permission. Sunung-jae did not appear unannounced. That alone felt like a shift. He texted once each morning, just to check in. No pressure. And once each evening. I'm nearby if you need anything. No demands. No guilt hidden between the lines. On the third day Naomi replied, I'd like to talk. In person. For a little while. His response came immediately. Whenever you're ready. They met in a small cafe near Camille's apartment. Neutral ground. Naomi chose the table by the window. She arrived first, hands wrapped around a warm cup, watching people pass by on the street below. When Sunung-jae walked in, she noticed he looked different. No entourage. No suit. Just dark jeans, a simple coat, hair slightly undone. He didn't approach until she looked up and nodded. Thank you for meeting me, he said quietly. Sit, she replied. They sat across from each other, the small table between them feeling larger than it was. I'm not here to decide anything today, Naomi said. I just need to understand something. Sunung-jae inclined his head. Ask. Why was it so easy to shut the gate, she asked. Not physically. Emotionally. The question wasn't angry. It was surgical. Sunung-jae took a long breath. Because in my world vulnerability is punished. Control is safety. I convinced myself that if I didn't bend I wouldn't break. And I was collateral, Naomi said. Yes, he admitted. And I hate that it took almost losing you to see that. Naomi studied his face, searching for evasion. There was none. You didn't run after me, she said. You didn't even check the cameras. His jaw tightened. Because I told myself you would leave. And part of me wanted to prove you would always come back. The honesty hurt more than lies ever had. I came back, Naomi said. To my own gate. And you still didn't open it. Sunung-jae's eyes darkened. That will haunt me for the rest of my life. Silence followed, heavy but necessary. I'm not here to punish you, Naomi said eventually. I'm here to protect myself. I know, he replied. She straightened slightly. Then hear this clearly. I will not live in a marriage where silence is used as a weapon. Where affection is conditional. Where access to safety depends on obedience. Sunung-jae nodded once. Understood. If I come back, she continued, it will be because I choose you. Not because I'm afraid of being locked out again. He leaned forward slightly, hands resting flat on the table. If you come back, the gate will never be close to you again. She met his gaze. Not just the gate. He didn't look away. Everything. That answer mattered. When they stood to leave, Naomi felt drained but lighter. Sunung-jae didn't reach for her. He simply stepped aside, letting her walk out first. That night, Naomi slept without dreaming of gates or locked doors. The next morning she went for a walk alone. No guards. No driver. Just the city and her thoughts. She passed the street where the mansion stood, visible from a distance. She didn't stop. Later that afternoon, Camille raised an eyebrow when Naomi returned calmer than she'd been all week. You talked to him, Camille said. Yes, Naomi replied. And I didn't shrink, Naomi said simply. That's new. Camille smiled faintly. Good. 2 days later, Naomi made a decision. She called Sunung-jae herself. I want to come by the house, she said. During the day. There was a pause. Controlled. Careful. Of course, he said. I'll be there. Or I won't, whichever you prefer. I want you there, she said. But this time I walk in on my own. I'll be at the door, he replied. When Naomi arrived, the gate was already open. Not unlocked. Sunung-jae stood just inside the threshold, hands visible, posture neutral. He didn't move toward her until she crossed the line herself. She stepped through slowly. The house felt the same and not quiet. Honest. I didn't bring my things, she said. I didn't expect you to, he replied. They stood in the entryway where everything had broken. This isn't forgiveness, Naomi said. I know. This is observation. He nodded. Take all the time you need. As she walked through the rooms, she noticed small changes. No music. No evidence of the other woman. The space felt cleared. When Naomi turned back toward him, something in his expression shifted. Not entitlement, not expectation. Hope, restrained and careful. "I'm not staying tonight," she said. "I know," he replied again. But when she reached the door to leave, she paused. "You did one thing right," she said quietly. He looked up. "You listened." And for the first time since that cold night, Naomi walked out of the house without fear, knowing the door was no longer something she had to earn. The days after Naomi's visit to the house unfolded with a careful, deliberate slowness. She didn't rush back. She didn't announce plans. She simply lived. At Camille's apartment, mornings began with quiet routines. Coffee brewed just strong enough, sunlight spilling across the small kitchen table, the distant noise of the city waking up. Naomi started taking longer walks, letting her body remember movement without fear. Each step felt like reclaiming ground that had once been taken from her, piece by piece. Sunungjai did not push. That, more than anything, unsettled her at first. He sent no follow-up messages asking how she felt about the house. No reminders of what he was changing. He kept his word and stayed in the space she had asked for, close enough to reach but far enough not to intrude. One evening, Naomi sat on Camille's balcony, phone in her hand, staring at the screen longer than she meant to. Camille noticed. "You thinking about him again?" "Yes," Naomi admitted. "That doesn't mean you're failing," Camille said gently. "It means you're human." Naomi smiled faintly. "I know. I just don't want to mistake effort for change." "That's wise," Camille replied. The next morning Naomi woke to a message. "No expectations today. Just wanted you to know the gate will always be open. Even if you never walk through it again." She read it twice. Then she put the phone down. Later that day, Naomi received an email from an old colleague, an offer for a short-term consulting project. Independent. Flexible. Entirely hers. She accepted without hesitation. Work gave her structure again. Purpose that wasn't tied to anyone else's schedule or mood. When she told Sunungjai about it days later, his response was immediate and simple. "I'm proud of you." Not possessive. Not congratulatory in a way that claimed credit. Just pride. That night, Naomi slept deeply. A week later she invited him to dinner at Camille's apartment. Camille raised an eyebrow when Naomi told her. "You sure?" "I am," Naomi said. "But only because I want to see who he is now, not who he promises to be." Sunungjai arrived alone. No driver waiting outside. No guards in sight. He brought nothing extravagant. Just a bottle of wine and flowers he handed to Camille, not Naomi. "For hosting," he said respectfully. That detail did not go unnoticed. Dinner was normal. Conversation flowed without tension. They spoke about work, about the city, about nothing that carried sharp edges. When silence fell, it wasn't uncomfortable. At one point, Naomi excused herself to the kitchen. Camille followed, voice low. "He's different," Camille said. "Yes," Naomi replied. "But different doesn't mean finished." Camille nodded. "You're in control." "I know," Naomi said. And this time she truly believed it. After dinner, Sunungjai stood to leave first. "I won't overstay," he said. "Thank you for having me." Naomi walked him to the door. The moment lingered, charged but contained. "You didn't ask me to come back," she observed. He met her gaze steadily. "Because if you do, I want it to be your idea. Not mine." Her chest tightened, not with fear but with recognition. "I'll call you," she said. He nodded. "Whenever you're ready." The door closed behind him without heaviness. Days passed. Naomi returned to the house once more, this time alone. She walked through the rooms slowly, testing her reactions. No panic. No anger. Just memory. She stood at the gate for a moment before leaving, fingers brushing the cool metal. Always open. That mattered. The following week, Naomi asked Sunungjai to meet her at the house again. This time she brought a small suitcase. Not all her things. Just enough. When he saw it, he didn't smile. He didn't reach for her. He simply stepped aside. She walked in. That night they slept in separate rooms. It was Naomi's decision. Sunungjai accepted it without comment. In the quiet hours, Naomi lay awake, listening to the house breathe around her. For the first time it didn't feel like a cage or a fortress. It felt neutral. Safe enough to choose. Over the next days, Naomi reintroduced herself to the space on her own terms. She rearranged furniture, cleared drawers, opened windows that had long stayed shut. Sunung-jae watched from a distance, helping only when asked. Once she caught him standing in the doorway, observing her carefully. "What?" she asked. "I'm learning where not to step," he replied. She smiled softly. "That's a good skill." One evening, Naomi found him in the garden, sleeves rolled up, tattoos visible, trimming a hedge that didn't need trimming. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," he replied. "I just like working with my hands." She joined him, sitting on the stone bench nearby. "I'm still afraid," she admitted. "I know," he said. "But I'm not afraid of you," she continued. "I'm afraid of losing myself again." Sunung-jae set the shears down carefully. "Then we make a rule." She raised an eyebrow. "A rule? If you ever feel yourself shrinking," he said, "you say it. Out loud. And I listen. Immediately." "And if you don't?" she asked. "Then you leave," he replied. Without discussion. She studied his face, searching for resistance. There was none. "That's fair," she said. That night, Naomi slept in the main bedroom for the first time since the gate. Sunung-jae slept on the couch. Not because she asked. Because he chose restraint. As Naomi drifted off, she realized something quietly powerful. This was no longer about forgiveness. It was about permission. And for the first time she was the one granting it. Slowly, deliberately, and without fear of the door closing behind her. Morning light filtered softly through the curtains, pale and unhurried. Naomi woke before the house did. For a moment she stayed still, listening. No footsteps outside her door. No voices. No tension waiting to announce itself. Just quiet, the kind that didn't feel like abandonment but like space. She sat up slowly, letting the weight of the night settle into something gentler. Sleeping in the main bedroom again hadn't erased the past, but it hadn't reopened the wound either. It felt like standing on new ground, unsure if it would hold but willing to test it. When she stepped into the hallway, she found Sunung-jae already awake, standing by the window downstairs with a mug in his hand. He didn't turn immediately when he heard her. He waited. That mattered. "Good morning," Naomi said. He turned then, expression calm, guarded in a way that felt respectful rather than distant. "Good morning." No assumptions. No reaching. Just presence. They shared breakfast quietly. Nothing elaborate. Toast, fruit, coffee. Ordinary things that once felt impossible in a house built around power and control. Naomi noticed how he asked before pouring her coffee, how he waited for her to sit before sitting himself. Not performative. Intentional. After breakfast, Naomi went out into the garden. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of earth and leaves. Sunung-jae followed a few minutes later but stopped several feet away, giving her room. "This is where I stood that night," Naomi said suddenly. He nodded. "I know. I remember thinking, if I walk away I'll disappear," she said. "Not from the world. From you." Sunung-jae swallowed. "I made you feel replaceable." "Yes," she said simply. "And I won't ever live like that again." "I wouldn't ask you to," he replied. Naomi turned to face him fully. "Then this is how it works, if it works at all." He waited. "I don't come back as your wife who waits," she said. "I come back as a partner who chooses. Every day. And you don't get to punish distance or disagreement with silence." "I won't," he said without hesitation. "And if I leave again," she continued, "you don't chase me with fear. You let me go with respect." His jaw tightened but he nodded. "That will be the hardest thing I ever learn." "But you will learn it," she said. "Yes." They stood there, the garden stretching around them like a boundary neither of them crossed without permission. Later that afternoon, Naomi unpacked the rest of her things. Not because she felt obligated. Because she wanted to. She reorganized the closet so half of it belonged to her. Clearly, visibly. She moved her books into the shelves downstairs, not hidden in a spare room. She placed her things in shared spaces, marking presence without asking for approval. Sunung-jae didn't interfere. He watched, learned, adjusted. That evening, Naomi asked him to sit with her in the living room. "There's something I need to say," she told him. He leaned back attentive. I'm listening. I don't forgive the gate, she said. Not fully. I may never. I understand, he replied. But I forgive myself for staying as long as I did, she continued. For believing silence was something I deserved. His eyes darkened, but he didn't interrupt. And if we move forward, she said, voice steady, it's not because you earned ownership back. It's because you learned how to stand beside me without closing doors. Sunung-jae exhaled slowly. That's all I want now. To stand beside you. That night they shared the bed again. Not in urgency. Not in desperation. Just warmth. Presence. Hands that didn't demand or take but rested where they were welcome. In the days that followed, life found a new rhythm. Naomi continued her work independently. She left the house without explanation and returned without interrogation. Sunung-jae attended meetings without disappearing emotionally. When tension arose, they spoke it aloud, even when it was uncomfortable. Once, during an argument about something small and stupid, Naomi felt the old fear stir in her chest. She stopped mid-sentence. I feel myself shrinking, she said quietly. Sunung-jae froze. Then he stepped back. Thank you for telling me. The argument dissolved right there. Not because it was resolved, but because it was handled without harm. Weeks passed. The house no longer felt like a fortress or a test. It became something closer to a home. Not perfect, not healed entirely, but honest. One evening, Naomi stood at the gate again. This time, Sunung-jae stood beside her, not behind. I used to think this gate was protection, he said. And now, she asked. How I know it was fear, he replied. Fear of losing control. Naomi reached out, resting her hand over his, on her own terms. You didn't lose control, she said. You lost illusion. He nodded. As they walked back inside together, Naomi realized something quietly profound. The danger she'd faced wasn't just outside the house that night. It had lived in the silence between words, in doors closed without explanation, in love that demanded obedience instead of trust. And now, standing in a place where nothing was locked, nothing withheld, nothing demanded, she felt safe. Not because someone powerful guarded her, but because she had learned she could walk away and be welcomed back without losing herself. Power meant nothing without presence. And love, she finally understood, wasn't proven by how tightly someone held on, but by how willingly they let you choose to stay.